Hi, it's Golsa. In my last and essentially first video on my channel, I discussed my political journey and transformation in Canada, which has also led to my social isolation here. And today I want to go a little deeper into that, but not talk about that isolation, but just one of the talking points used against people like me to call us racist or fascist or whitewashed or you know the list. And that is immigration and basically mass migration. Well, in case you don't already know it, I am from Iran originally, and my family and I lived in Turkey as refugees for 2 years prior to coming to Canada. So, speaking about mass migration might be a little controversial coming from me, but at the same time, I hope that someone with my life experience could address this and show care for refugees themselves in criticizing mass migration and be understood from that perspective as well, not just from the perspective of a Canadian citizen, which I also am right now. So I have sort of an unbiased view towards it, really, because I have been a refugee or well, a landed immigrant because we were accepted into Canada as permanent residents. We were no longer refugees here, but nevertheless, that is why we are here. And I also have been a citizen here, and I know how it affects both groups. So, when we talk about mass migration, we are basically addressing an uncontrolled number of people coming into Canada and, in one way or another, obtaining either a permanent residency here, becoming refugees, or just holding temporary visas, work permits, student permits, and things like that to live in Canada, one way or another. And the numbers just have been increasing year by year, and it's sort of out of hand at this point, and the government is trying to restrict it now, but the way they're responding to it is honestly not appropriate in my opinion, and I think that it is negatively affecting those who are probably most fit to be here in Canada rather than those who are not really contributing to the Canadian economy, to Canadian society, or those who are actually causing issues here and using this opportunity of life in Canada to do certain things like money laundering or other kinds of financial and even worse than financial crimes. I'm not gonna go too deep into that. I'm just trying to tell you what I have an issue with, and that is not having immigrants here in Canada. This country has at large been built by immigrants, so that is not what I'm talking about. But the fact that you need to have the means to accommodate and support all these people coming into your country, and also those who are already inside the country, they also deserve to be supported. They are your citizens, they need to have access to services. Budgets that are there to serve citizens and permanent residents should not be cut to instead now accommodate newcomers. um, the priority should be given to those who are already here, and then if we have the means, bring in more people. But that has not been the case in Canada. So my family and I did not have a say in coming to Canada or any other country. We were in Turkey and applied for refugee status via UNHCR, and then Canada picked us during Harper administration, and we came here. And shortly after we came here in 2014, Justin Trudeau took power or office, and Canada has been just getting worse and worse ever since. And one of the reasons for that is mass migration. I remember that during Justin Trudeau, there was just one case of 25,000 Syrian refugees, and things like that have been happening every other year or every few years for different reasons, different wars, different issues. And it's a little bit ironic too, because right now, as Iran is at war, also there was basically a genocide in January inside the country against Iranians. But now the visa processes and all those are getting harder and stricter, exactly for people who are running away from war, and for people who are already here and are claiming refugee status here after an actual war and after an actual genocide. These people are being rejected, they are being treated as criminals themselves, or as people who are committing fraud, as if like nothing is happening in the country at all for them to be claiming refugee status. And that is while we have those who are doing the killing inside Iran operate businesses here, do money laundering here in Canada, and all kinds of things. They own property here. We have caught them several times on the streets. They are working here among us. So Canada doesn't seem to have a problem with those who are doing the killing, but actually actively tries to provide the killers and the predators with more prey and with more Iranians to go back to Iran and be murdered or imprisoned or executed by this government. So there's a situation with Iranians. Me being an Iranian, I think it's important to talk about that as well, and to give that perspective that I am not against supporting refugees. I'm not against supporting people like myself. I'm not against humanitarian work or any of that. It's just the contradictions and the hypocrisy that I am against. And one example is this treatment of Iranians and those who are seeking refugee status right now, which I think they're doing it now because for years they weren't doing the correct checks. They weren't really being careful in their conduct, in those that they were accepting, and they just accepted whoever, whatever. They didn't care. And now everyone has to pay for it because what? Because Canada neglected its own responsibilities towards its own population regarding security and just who they're letting in. So they neglected us, and now they're neglecting a people fleeing from war and violence and ethnic cleansing, basically, because that is what's happening against Iranians inside Iran. It's Islamists attempting to ethnically cleanse Iranians. Back in 2015, when it had only been a few months since our arrival in Canada, and even in the first year, I had shared my story as a refugee in Turkey in a space, and it was very positively received. And I was invited to various events to give speeches at universities, at the library, at different platforms. And at some point, I stopped talking about Turkey, and I started addressing the issues that we were facing as landed immigrants with refugee background here in Canada, especially my parents who were past their 50s and they did not really know English, and my mom who had chronic problems and could not really work just whatever job. And the fact that as children of immigrant parents, we had a lot on our shoulders, my brother and I. So I started talking about that, and that was basically the moment that those invitations to give those speeches sort of stopped, and I wasn't invited anymore just because I don't know, maybe I was considered ungrateful, but I was addressing the elephant in the room that no one wanted to talk about, and it was the fact that Canada was not equipped to accommodate all these people coming into the country. At some point, it was mainly refugees, then it was people who were getting like visitor visas and then getting work permits here. It's just like every other year it changes. It's a new group. It's just not really like a linear thing. It's fluctuating, and every time we're struggling with a different issue. But mass migration in general is the main problem here. So uh, I was basically not listened to. And back then, as I said, it was a matter of being grateful or not, or maybe being too radical or too loud or things like that. But nowadays, I say the same things still. I say that Canada cannot accommodate all these people, and it's racist to say that at this point. I don't know what the logic is. Now I can say it, and if I do say it, then I'm just a bad person. And that it does not matter that I am one of those people, that I'm trying to advocate for these people. And I'm not against accepting refugees, I'm not against accepting immigrants. I just think that it should be thought through. It should be in stages where we feel ready to accept this group of people, this number of people, and then okay, we have reached the capacity now. We build, we provide services, we do what we can, and then when we are ready again, we accept more people. But that has not been the case for Canada. It's just been a constant coming into Canada process without much work being done here to actually be able to balance it between the existing population and the incoming population. So we don't have enough jobs, we don't have enough schools, we don't have the right economy, housing crisis. There was even not enough housing for them because especially because like some people from China will come and purchase property and not like rent it or anything or live in it and leave, and it was for their own financial whatever that they were doing, and Canada had to make that illegal in order for people to be able to actually get into the housing market again and buy property or at least like rent. There was a whole crisis about it, and it's still in terms of pricing. It's crazy, and it's just not sustainable, and life is not easy, and it can keep getting worse if we do not really address the deep roots of this problem. And that's one of the things that if people like me talk about, you're accused of being fascist and xenophobic and racist and this and that. But that's not the case. How can I be when I myself was a refugee? When I have benefited from immigration, when I have fled from a country that was not safe for me, how can I be against that for other people? But it's not a matter of being for or against, it's just a matter of thinking what's best for every party involved. You need to think about your own people, and you need to think about those you are accepting. So I've seen Canada, for instance, cut off budget for the CRA or for other organizations that are supposed to support the existing population, the residents, citizens, and then instead it increases budget for the IRB, the Immigration and Refugee Board of Canada. CRA is Canada Revenue Agency, and IRB Immigration and Refugee Board, IRCC Immigration and Refugee Citizenship Canada, and even IRCC gets budget cut sometimes, while IRB gets budget increases most of the time. So you see the problem here, that the priority is not given to those who are already here. And that is the important thing. You should first use the whole potential of these people here and try to accommodate them, make sure that they are able to chase their dreams, they are able to live a dignified life, and it's not just a matter of meeting ends. And then you go for new people and you open the doors for them. But it's been the complete opposite, and um, no one is willing to admit that. So there's that problem. And there's a lot of issues culturally that we are facing. For instance, people leaving their countries and coming to Canada with the same habits. If you're living in a country that's not doing great in terms of some social and cultural norms, it's just not a place to live in, not a safe place to live in, not a place to live in dignity, and you're coming here with the same attitudes and making the place unsafe for others, then you're a problem. If women don't feel safe in your community, in your country, and you are making them feel unsafe here as well, you're a problem. If your religion was forced upon you and you're now forcing it upon your children here in Canada, you're a problem. So these are things that should not be tolerated in the name of cultural tolerance, because it's things that destroy these cultures. It's things that has led to all this migration crisis. These people are leaving those places behind because of all these problems combined, and then instead of leaving the problems behind as well, they bring it here with themselves. If there's a lot of theft or corruption in the system, they want to bring that over here. And then there's nothing left of the Canadian identity. But diversity should not be that. Diversity does not mean erasure of the hosting culture and the hosting identity. Like the diversity it should not mean the loss of your values in the name of cultural acceptance and tolerance. That is not what it is all about. And there are people like myself who are fleeing certain behaviors, certain rules, certain ideologies, and then we are facing them here again. And we are told to shut up about it. We are told that we are the problem. We are racist. We are, I don't know, this phobic and that phobic. If we speak out against any of these things that we have been victims of. I myself, I also told you in my previous video that I was working in the government of Canada in the Immigration and Refugee Board actually, and I was doing my job very professionally. Nothing about my job or my performance was a question, but me speaking out against Islamism and me speaking about my concerns and fears about this influx of Muslim immigrants into Canada was the reason that I lost my job. I was told that I cannot continue working there because I had some tweets about it. And they also gave me a chance to say that I'm sorry about saying those things, but I felt like it's a betrayal to my own identity, my own life experience, and those that I know if I say that I'm sorry about telling the truth, about saying that I fear this ideology, that I fear those who adhere to this ideology. And there's so many refugees coming in here saying they hate Islam, they hate even Muslims, they hate this, hate that, and they get accepted as refugees. Their narratives, their cases are okay, acceptable, but then those same people are not worthy of a position in the government of Canada. They cannot work even as an administrative clerk in the government of Canada because they have trauma from their past life, from their life in their home countries. How does that make any sense? Like, what is the logic behind any of this? You bring in people who are belonging to different Muslim sects, like Shias fleeing Sunnis, Sunnis fleeing Shias, everyone fleeing Wahhabis. I don't know, all these groups of Muslims coming in, and then they will very well want to keep being Muslims, and they are here practicing, supporting all these things in those countries that mm, other groups are fleeing from. And then you have those who are fleeing from Muslims as a whole because they don't believe in it, and they're all coming here together, and you really think it's a melting pot and they're gonna just kumbaya and nothing matters anymore, and all this fear and trauma and hate and whatever just vanishes. Well, it doesn't. It does not. And if someone that is wearing a hijab is allowed a position in the government of Canada, so should I, as someone who very much fears the ideology of that person. because I have been on the receiving end of violence and deprivation and intimidation from that very group that you think somehow is victimized forever because of your own guilt towards minorities. Just because they seem to be a minority here, which not for long, doesn't mean that they're victims or I am a villain now just because I'm supposedly on equal footing here with them. But now you're taking that equal footing away from me by not letting me speak my mind. So it's like the same thing happening again, which I also discussed in my previous video. But it's really weird what's going on here. We allow hate towards the Jewish communities. There's a lot of um, violent incidents taking place, especially in Ontario and Quebec. At the same time, speaking out against Islamism can be leading to serious consequences. Then we are supposedly making immigration more restrictive, but it's affecting those who most qualify. And instead, there are people running money laundry businesses or uh, criminal groups and all these things, and they're here in Canada. Then we supposedly ban terrorists or enlists the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps as a terrorist entity, and then at the same time we have MPs directly or indirectly endorsing them and endorsing the leader of the Islamic Republic. So these contradictions really make someone like me, who's an Iranian and is directly affected by all of these things, just really, really not proud to be a Canadian. And I don't think Canada was supposed to be this ball of contradiction that it is right now. But I think we need to fix it because otherwise it's gonna turn into a very, very unsafe country. And it's also not going to be able to support itself economically. So we either address it or we watch it burn. And talking about this is not racist, it's the truth. And truth is not subjective.